Oh, yeah.
So I'll see you tomorrow again.
Yeah. We'll do the vocational November 6th.
So did you like, if you don't know me by now? That's all.
It's the on her phone. It's the whole world is going to see her on her phone.
Good evening. We're going to be giving a presentation on the upcoming ballot questions that will be on the ballot next Tuesday, November 5th, on the election changes to the City of Lowell and the Community Preservation Act. And this is a presentation by the City of Lowell Law Department. My name is Rachel Brown. I'm the First Assistant City Solicitor. And if you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Christine O'Connor, City Solicitor.
I'm Eric Slagle, the Director of Development Services.
So we'll be talking from the Law Department first about the election systems, and then Eric will talk about the Community Preservation Act, which is question 3 on the ballot. And afterwards, there'll be time for questions if people have questions. So as you may have heard, the city will be changing its election system for municipal elections, and that change will happen in 2021. It will be changing from the current system in which 9 city councillors and 6 school committee members are elected at large, and it's a plurality system where essentially everyone with the most votes gets in. So there are 2 options for the change. The first is still an at-large system, and it's called ranked choice voting. And then the second is a hybrid representation, form of representation, where the city would be divided into 8 districts and 3 at-large or citywide representatives. And we'll talk more about those systems in a moment. But first of all, I just want to go over how the choice is going to be made. So the 2 systems will appear on the ballot next Tuesday, November 5th. And voters will be asked to say whether they vote for a system or not. The council will be the body ultimately determining what the new election system is to be, because it will require a charter change. And they're going to be doing that on or before December 3rd, 2019. It'll probably be before, because I think there's not going to be a meeting on December 3rd. However, the City Council will give considerable weight to the results of the ballot questions, so it's super important that people come out and vote on these questions to let your City Council know which system you think is the best system for Lowell. So to go through the 2 options, the first option is at-large ranked choice voting. So in this system, all of the candidates, like I said before, would run citywide and would represent the whole city. So essentially the same as it is now, there would also be the same number of city councillors and school committee members. However, here's where the differences lie. So now when you go into the ballot booth, you simply circle people that you want to vote for. Under a ranked choice voting system, you would rank your choices. So if you would rank your first preference number 1, you would rank your second preference number 2. You can vote for as many people as you want to rank. The system is not a winner-take-all system, by which I mean it's not simply a function of how many circles there are in total on the ballot sheets. So the first choices, ranked number 1 choices, are counted first. And then through a series of transfers, second and lower choices would be counted as well. So if your first choice person doesn't make it, your second choice person may make it. And so unlike the current system, where in theory it's possible for a majority of the voting population to control or elect all of the candidates of choice through their voting, that wouldn't be possible under this system. The voting is tallied so that it's ultimately roughly proportional to voting preferences. This is a sample ballot. This was just taken from the internet. If you're interested in this and you Google ranked choice voting, there's a lot of different examples of ballots and also videos explaining how it works. But you can see that there are candidate names on the left-hand side, and then on the top row, there's first choice, second choice, third choice, fourth choice, etc. So when you come into the voting booth as a voter, this is really what you would look at. And if you, in this example, if you liked Mary Tawa from the Lime Party as the best candidate, you think she's going to do the best for this election, you would vote her your number one choice. And then, whoever your second preferred candidate is, you would rank them as your second choice, etc., for however many candidates you want to vote for. This example says up to 6 candidates. That wouldn't necessarily be the case it's just an example. So that's what the ballot would look like. So why would anyone like this system? Some commonly noted features of the system. The citywide representation means that the all of the councillors are answerable to all voters. And that means that the candidates running can choose whether they want to run on geography. So if you do feel that you are you want to speak to neighborhood issues, you can run your campaign on neighborhood issues, and because of the way the voting is tallied, the threshold of votes that you need to get elected is lower than it is under the current system. And so that might be enough, like if you want to run in your local district. However, it doesn't have to be geographic. You could run on an issue. Say you're very concerned about the environment or something like that, you could run on that issue. And also all minority groups, whether that's a racial ethnic minority or, as I said, maybe a minority of voters for whom a particular issue is important, those minority groups would have an equal opportunity to elect candidates of choice. At-large elections generally generate more competition than district elections. That apparently is a fact that has some documentation. So some people worry that competition may be restricted in a district-based system, at least over time. Ranking candidates is straightforward, and the system resolves the potential vote dilution issue of the present system because it's not a winner-take-all system. Okay, so that's the first option. The second option is the hybrid representation, in which the city would be divided into 8 districts. And under this system, some candidates would be elected at large and some would be elected by district. So there would be 8 district seats and 3 at-large seats. And as you may notice, that equals 11. So there would be 2 more people on the city council than they currently are. At least 2 of those districts would be majority-minority districts. And here, because of the lawsuit that led to this change, which I'm not going to go into here unless there are questions about it, But the majority minority in this context means Asian American and Latino. So 2 of the districts would be majority minority, Asian American and Latino. And the school, we're taking questions at the end, but you may ask a question.
Sorry about that. But I do think it warrants an explanation because I'm, to some degree, a little bit confused. Could you just explain a little bit more the majority-minority district? Because that seems to intrigue folks. What does it mean?
So
I should say, I understand what it means, but how and or where would it be relevant?
where would it be relevant? I'm not sure I quite understand
So
that.
we're going to have eight and 3, so people say, well, okay, where is it going to be a minority district?
Well, the district lines haven't been drawn at this point. So essentially, though, what would happen would be information would be gathered from the census and American Community Survey data that we have at the moment. And from that, we would, well, not we, but an independent expert would be hired to draw the district lines. And the districts would be drawn so that based on the information we have about citizen voting age population, the 2 of the districts would have to contain more than 50% Asian American and Latino citizen voting age population persons. So a combination of those 2 groups would have to equal more than 50% in those districts. As to where they would be geographically, I can't really speak to that.
Okay.
It would,
So is it just those 2 specific populations? For instance, Back Central is Portuguese, large concentration of Portuguese people. Would that be considered, I mean, this is, and I know you want to hold questions, but this is what is important at this point.
Sure, no, that's fine. No, the definition of Hispanic, Latino, and Asian American would be taken from the census definition, and that doesn't include Portuguese. So for the purposes of drawing the districts, it's those 2 populations that are the populations that comprise the majority minority. If you want to add anything.
Simply because of the lawsuit.
Right.
Simply because of the lawsuit that stipulates one of those two districts, one has to be Latino, one has to be Cambodian.
No, it's a combination.
Okay, or combination.
Yeah.
Got it.
So, sorry, yeah, just to be clear, the combined population in a district has to be over 50% of those 2 populations combined.
So if there was a hypothetical, if part of the lawsuit was for representation from the African community, presumably that the negotiations could have included a district for that community, should there be one. So, okay, I'm very clear now. That is helpful. So, thank you.
And if I may, then, and I'll get right over it.
Feeding off of what Councillor Elliott said, let's do a hypothetical example and say that a good portion of the acre was deemed to be made up with a majority of minority combined Latino and Asian. That does not guarantee that an Asian or a Latino would necessarily be the winner. You could have Joe Smith from roots from Ireland win if he had enough votes there, right?
Yeah, you could definitely have that result. The remedy in this lawsuit is to give an equal opportunity to vote candidates of choice. So people still have to come and vote to elect a candidate, but also people's candidates of choice could be whoever their candidates of choice are. You know, that's totally up to whoever the voters in the
That's
acre
right.
would
So
be.
there's no guarantee that a minority would be elected.
No,
Right,
absolutely
right.
not.
And I'm also concerned about the ranked choice voting, and I do not see how it's any different than what we have now, except for the different way about it. People in Belvedere still could come out and vote number 1, number 2, and number 3, and still get the people that they wanted. I'm convinced of it, but that's just my opinion. I don't see how it's any different. I don't see how a minority, I just don't see it.
Do you want to?
I mean, it creates opportunities that currently don't exist simply because of the math behind it. But one of the things that I just wanted to note in response to something that Councilor Elliott had said, one of the distinctions really between the districts and the ranked choice voting is that ranked choice voting does not depend on where a particular group lives within the community as a whole, number one. And number two, it also, if there is movement of various communities, that isn't impacted by ranked choice voting. And lastly, when we speak to other minority groups, such as, say, African Americans or others, while the districts may not specifically take other minority groups into account, one of the distinctions between the districts and the ranked choice voting is that the ranked choice voting would provide those same opportunities to all minority groups throughout the city. And it's just a distinction between the two.
And when you have ranked choice voting, did they determine, or it's not determined, how many councillors you'd have?
There would be 9 councillors. It
It'd
wouldn't be
9.
changed.
So then would in essence just have a final election that would say you have 9 choices, wouldn't it?
Not sure I understand that
Well,
question.
you saw an example of first choice up to sixth choice.
Yeah.
So would it be determined number 1 choice, number 9 choice?
Oh, well, not necessarily, because you can actually rank as many people as you... So say there are 20 candidates who run. If you want to, you could rank all 20. Probably not many people would do that because people aren't necessarily informed about 20 candidates. But perhaps we should make sure we finish this, because I know we want to make sure that Eric has time to talk about the CPA as well. So to get back to the school committee under the hybrid representation. So as I said, there would be 8 districts. So for the school committee, those 8 districts would be divided into 4 groups of 2. So they would be kind of paired up. And 1 member of the school committee would be elected from each of those paired districts. And then 2 school committee members would run at large. And again, the council would have 8 district seats, so 8 district representatives and 3 at-large or citywide representatives. And this is kind of a sample ballot for the districts. It's not obviously a complete ballot, but it's just a kind of highlight on what it might look like. This is actually taken from Worcester. So you can see that, I think there's a pointer, there it is. Well, it doesn't do much. The district council would essentially be 2 options. Do you want this person or this person? And then for the councillor at large, there would be more choices because you would be electing 3. And given the rules for preliminaries in Lowell, there could be up to 7 names on the ballot there for the councillors at large. So 2 times 3 plus 1. So some features of this type of system. So some people prefer knowing that they have a local representative in their local area. Somebody who lives near them, somebody that maybe they actually see occasionally in their area. That is, that's attractive to many people. By the same token, or perhaps not the same, but there are also 3 at-large representatives, so there is some coverage, if you like, for the sort of citywide issues and representatives whose job it is to represent the city wide. The barriers to entry for candidates, so that is to say, if you're a person who wants to run an election campaign to get elected and be involved in your city government, those might be lower if you run locally than if you run at large, so throughout the city. The ballot we just saw is a simple ballot. You have a district rep you vote for, and then up to 3 at-large votes. And this system also is acceptable as a resolution of the potential vote dilution because 2 districts, as we've discussed, would be majority-minority districts. So that's essentially what the choices are. And so when you get to the ballot on November 5th next week, after you've voted for your preferred candidates, you're going to turn over your page. Make sure you turn over the page because all of the ballot questions are on the back. And you're going to see 3 questions. So the first question, and it's a long piece of text, but this is the exact wording of the ballot question. So it says, of the 2 options that the city can choose from, do you support the adoption of a ranked choice election system, also called proportional representation, according to which the city will continue to have 9 city councillors and 6 school committee members? All candidates will run as at-large/citywide representatives, and voters may vote for as many candidates as they wish, ranking their choice of candidates in order of preference. And then there's 2 options, yes and no. So what your vote means, a yes vote means that you do want the city to adopt the ranked choice election system. A no vote means that you do not want the city to adopt that system. Then you're going to see question 2. And should I read out the whole thing? I'll read out the whole thing. Question 2. Of the 2 options that the city can choose from, do you support the adoption of a combined district and at-large system, also called a hybrid system, according to which the city council will be enlarged to 11 members, composed of 8 district representatives and 3 at-large/citywide representatives? The school committee will be composed of 4 district representatives and 2 at-large/citywide representatives, and each voter will vote for A, 1 district city council candidate and up to 3 at-large candidates, and B, 1 school district committee candidate, I think I said that wrong, and up to 2 at-large school committee candidates. And again, yes or no. And what your vote means here, a yes vote, can I just read this and then? A yes vote means that you do want the city to adopt the hybrid election system. A no vote means that you do not want the city to adopt that system. Councillor Conway.
Yes, how is the mayor chosen in both those
Yeah, good question.
options?
The selection of the mayor does not change from the current system. So under both of these options, you end up with 6 school committee members, and 1 you have 9 councillors and 11 councillors. The mayor would be elected in the way the mayor is usually elected, and the mayor would be a member of the school committee.
So if, excuse me, assuming it's 8-3 and you have councillors that are district-wide, and then you have councillors that are at large for the entire city. So will the vote be equal between those 2, or will that be changed?
Well, as it stands, it would be equal. They would all be councillors, and all of the councillors have the same votes. I mean, I would say that, there can be modifications to either of these systems as the years go on, and those would be brought by the, through the city council. But as it stands, yeah, they would have the same vote.
So is that the normal process? Because obviously you people have looked at models, both these models, and is that how it's done?
Well, I mean, in Worcester, for example, they have a totally different election for the mayor. The mayor kind of appears on the ballot as a separate race, even though the mayor is functionally the same as the mayor in Lowell. It's not a strong mayor community, so I can't say that it's always done that way, but it hasn't been modified by anything in these.
I heard that, and this is the last comment here because I know you have to get through it. I heard that the councillors that were chosen at large, it would be, the mayor would be picked from those three, let's say.
That hasn't been part of.
That model was not done anywhere?
Well, I can't say it's not done anywhere, but that's not the model that's been chosen here.
Okay.
Right,
Well, you mean the model is not chosen here, or is it, I don't understand what you just said, I'm sorry.
Nothing in either of these election systems really changes anything about what the city's system of electing its mayor is. So it would be done in the same way with all of the councillors voting, and any of the councillors could be mayor. Okay,
so when there's a change like this, then that's the normal, is that you can pick the mayor, would be at large, should we say? Is that correct?
There is no real normal per se amongst communities because there's so many variations. However, in terms of how the city approached it, what isn't specifically changed by the settlement remains in place. And so, for example, with respect to the selection of the mayor, that would remain in place.
Right. I just, and the reason why I asked that is because I know that people have asked me that, and to be honest with you, I have no idea. Because they said that they heard it was all the way through the spectrum from A to Z on how it was picked, and I didn't have an answer for it. So you're telling me that the way it's done now is that it's basically done the exact same way that we have. Is that correct?
That's right.
Right.
Okay.
We rely on our language.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep. Thanks.
If I could, two quick questions, because I know we want to get to the CPA. You had mentioned that you could vote up to, if there are 18 names in the ballot, you could vote, or you could rank up to 18. It wouldn't be back at 9? You wouldn't rank 9 as opposed to 18? That's one question. And my second question, what happens to preliminary elections? For example, if we did the district, would 23 candidates constitute a preliminary election, or there's no more preliminary elections based upon?
It would be based on the district, but that's another example of language that we would essentially continue to rely on in terms of what would trigger a preliminary election.
So I'll just add, in the consent decree, the preliminary elections are addressed specifically, and under the ranked choice option, it's you don't really need preliminaries in a ranked choice system, and it kind of goes to your other question. You could cap the voting at 9. That would be something that is not spoken to. The default is that you can vote for as many candidates as you wish. Obviously, it doesn't mean that more than 9 get elected. And my understanding is that, mathematicians who've looked at the results of ranked choice, it tends to suggest that after about the 5th or 6th ranking, the changes in the actual results are so minimal that it may be worth having a cutoff at 9, so it's easier for people to find out information about candidates. With the hybrid system, at the moment the same rules apply for preliminaries as do now, so 2n plus 1. So essentially in a district, if you have 3 people running, you have a preliminary. That's going to be the case for 2 election cycles if that option is chosen, and then if people don't like that, we can revisit. So, and just to, it may be a little bit confusing the way the questions are. Why don't they just ask us if we want ranked choice or hybrid in one question? After conferring with the Secretary of State, we've presented the questions this way. But the council is hoping to get information from your votes on the ballot, and so it doesn't really provide information if you vote the same way on questions. So if you vote yes for both or vote no for both, you're kind of canceling out your vote. So to provide information about which system you prefer, and again, the city will be changing to one or the other, you would vote yes for one of the choices and no for the other choice. So just some additional information. The city has a website at Your Lowell, Your Vote. and there is information there in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Khmer. There's also a video that was created by the Lawyers for Civil Rights about the Lowell election. I was going to show that video, but I think maybe we'll let Eric do his slides, and then, if there's time afterwards, we can always show it then. But I do recommend watching it because I think it is quite a helpful video in terms of explaining, what the choices are and what differences they make. I've also included some FAQs here. Some of those we've gone over already about how the districts would be joined by an independent expert taking into consideration census data. We talked a little bit about how ranked choice voting will be counted. We can get back to that if there's time. And we talked about preliminary elections. And some people have sometimes asked, which option will cost the city more. We would say it's very hard to say at this time, but there are some costs associated with each. So the staffing on election day may have to be amplified for ranked choice voting. There is software that we would have to buy, possibly buy. It is also available open source, but it would have to be approved by the Secretary of State. So there may be costs associated. And then there would be costs associated with drawing districts. And the districts would have to be redrawn every 10 years also. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric now so he can talk about the third ballot question.
Thank you, Rachel. So moving on from the voting system, there is a third ballot question that is currently on the ballot for next Tuesday. As Rachel mentioned earlier in the presentation, all of the ballot questions are on the back side of your ballot, so it's important that you turn your ballot over and fill out the answers to the 3 ballot questions to the best of your ability. So ballot question 3 is a ballot question that was placed on the ballot by the City Council regarding the Community Preservation Act, or the CPA, by vote in September of this year. What is the Community Preservation Act? That's the most common question that we have been getting. The Community Preservation Act is a state statute that has a local opt-in provision which allows for cities and towns in Massachusetts to opt in via a ballot question to establish a dedicated funding source for community preservation. The community preservation is defined in the Act as a few different things, which are laid out on this slide. To acquire and preserve open space, parks, and conservation land, to protect public drinking water supplies and scenic areas, to protect farmland and forests from development, to restore and preserve historic properties, and to help meet local families' housing needs. So those are the different items that would be eligible for funding under the Community Preservation Act. How is the Community Preservation Act funded? The CPA will be funded, if the voters approve it, by an excise of 1% on annual property taxes. For purposes of knowing how much that would affect individuals who are property owners, for a $350,000 single-family home in Lowell right now, that would be approximately $24.50 per year. That 1% amount, if it is opted into by the vote on the ballot question, would allow the city to access matching funds from the state. The state has set up a pool called the Community Preservation Trust Fund. That pool is funded by fees paid at the Registry of Deeds and occasionally by appropriations from the state legislature. The matching money that you get from the state for community preservation, if you opt in, can be matched up to a 100% match. Our understanding is, based on an increase in the balance of the Community Preservation Trust Fund that was made by the legislature in 2019 is they're anticipating that the match in 2020 will be approximately a 100% match. So for every dollar that we get for community preservation from the 1% excise, we are eligible to potentially get $1 from the state to use for those projects. The City Council, when it passed the proposed ballot question, proposed 3 exemptions to the Community Preservation Act. These exemptions mean that these things will not be subject to the 1% excise tax. The first $100,000 of the value of residential property will not be subject to the tax. Property owned and occupied by any person who qualifies for low-income housing or low to moderate income senior housing will not be subject to the tax. And certain commercial and industrial properties will not be subject to the tax, specifically Class 3 commercial and Class 4 industrial properties will not be subject to the CPA tax. The text of the ballot question for the Community Preservation Act is specifically laid out in the statute and is required to be read as is listed on the slide. It's a little bit confusing. It says, shall the city of Lowell accept sections 3 to 7 inclusive of chapter 44B of the general laws as approved by the Lowell City Council, a summary of which appears below. This is the language of the question. It is required by law to be the language of the question. It is important just for folks to remember that question 3 is the Community Preservation Act question, even though it doesn't say Community Preservation Act in the question itself. It is noted on the ballot that it is the Community Preservation Act question, but please read the summary of your question and that will let you know which question is about the Community Preservation Act. So what your vote means. If you vote yes on question 3, it means that you want the city to adopt the Community Preservation Act at the 1% rate that was proposed by the City Council, which will allow the city to access the matching funds from the Community Preservation Trust Fund. In total, the Community Preservation Trust Fund, since the inception of the Community Preservation Act, has provided over $600 million to communities that have participated in the CPA. So that's a pool over the time that the CPA has been in effect of $600 million that communities that say yes to their ballot question have had access to. So the city would have access to that fund if you vote yes. A no vote means that you do not want the city to adopt the Community Preservation Act. And so at this point, that's the end of the presentation on the Community Preservation Act. If folks have any other questions on either the voting information that was provided by Rachel or the Community Preservation Act, please let us know.
I think it's just good to note that this question here with the CPA, that is a binding referendum question.
Yes, that's a very good point. While questions 1 and 2 on the voting issues are non-binding questions to provide information to the City Council, as Councilor Mercier has noted, question number 3 is a binding vote. The city will be bound by the results of the votes on question 3. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Milanelli.
Thank you. Just quickly, Eric, can you just touch upon, if we do adopt this, that the Community Preservation Trust Fund will actually have, I believe, a board that would actually be approving what projects to recommend be funded?
Yes. If the CPA is adopted by Lowell, a CPA committee will be created in Lowell that will review any project proposals on an annual basis for access to the CPA funds that have been collected. That CPA committee will review the proposals and make a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council will have the final say on which proposals, if any, it chooses to fund during that year. But there's a committee made up of citizens who will be reviewing any proposal that comes for CPA funding.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman.
Maybe I'll play that video if there's, if you just give me not your phone. Okay. And I'll just also that this panel here will be appearing on City Life tomorrow morning, by which I mean me, Chris O'Connor, and Eric Slagle, to discuss these questions even more. So hopefully, and so this is the website that the city has set up. So it's worth maybe just having a quick look. It's quite small here, but you can see that there's information in English, Spanish, Khmer, and Portuguese. And it does have, hopefully you received in the mail, Lowell Voter Information Guide, which also gives explanation about the ballot questions. This side just shows the first page of that because this is a website about the elections. But on the back, there's also information about the third ballot question, the CPA ballot question. And this is a video about, I don't know how to turn up the volume. Yeah, I want to do the volume.
In this short video,
All right.
we'll give you information about what's happening, why it matters, and how you can get involved. Right now, all of Lowell's City Council and school committee members are elected citywide. That means everyone in the city votes for all 9 city councilors and all 6 school committee members, and the candidates who get the most votes across the city win.
Okay, so what's the problem with that?
The problem is that it can dilute the vote of communities of color. 51% of the voters can control 100% of the seats, 100% of the time. Many people think that's why Lowell's elected officials haven't traditionally reflected the rich diversity of the whole city.
Wait, wasn't there a lawsuit about this?
Yes, that's why the city is changing its election system. Asian and Latino residents of Lowell sued the city, saying that the current way of electing the city council and school committee violates the Federal Voting Rights Act. The city settled that lawsuit by agreeing to change to a system that will be more fair for everyone.
So then how's the new system going to be different?
Well, that's where you come in. The city is deciding now on the best election system to adopt. There are 2 options. Option 1 is ranked choice voting. Option 2 is a district-based system. In November, Lowell's residents will get to vote on which system they like best.
Okay, so tell me about option 1. What is ranked choice voting?
Under ranked choice voting, all candidates for both city council and school committee would still run citywide, but voters would rank candidates in order of preference. Voters would mark the candidates as first choice, second choice, third choice, and so on. Votes would then be counted in rounds, in a way that maximizes the effectiveness of every vote to ensure that as many voters as possible will help elect a candidate they rank highly.
And what are the advantages of ranked choice voting?
First, it solves the vote dilution problem of the current system. Because it's not a winner-take-all system, a majority can't cancel out the vote of communities of color. Many people believe that ranked choice voting leads to more proportional and inclusive results. A majority of voters can still elect a majority of seats, but smaller voting groups also get representation. For example, voters from the same neighborhood or minority voting groups can also elect a candidate of their choice if they all rank the same candidate highly. Also, there is no need to draw district lines.
Okay, that sounds good, but what's option 2?
Option 2 is a district-based system called the 8-3 hybrid system. Under this option, the city council would be expanded from 9 to 11 seats. 8 of the seats would be district or neighborhood seats. That means the city would be divided up into 8 districts. Each district would elect its own representative for city council. 2 of those districts would be majority-minority, meaning the population in each of those 2 districts would be more than 50% Asian and Latino combined. Then there would be 3 at-large councilors who would be elected citywide. The school committee would be elected in a similar way.
So what are the advantages of the 8-3 hybrid system?
First, it would also solve the vote dilution problem of the current system. With district or neighborhood elections that include some majority-minority districts, you don't run into the issue of a majority that can completely cancel out the vote of communities of color. Also, many people like district-based systems because they ensure local representation for neighborhoods within the city. It's also cheaper to run for office in just one district than citywide, so that may encourage more candidates to run.
Okay, that option sounds good too, but how do we know which option is better for Lowell?
Well, that's something you and everyone else in Lowell need to help decide. There are pros and cons to each election system. The important thing to remember is that Lowell is going to select one of these two options. Either will be a big improvement from the current election system, but it's up to you to help decide which is best.
So how's this decision going to be made, and how do I get involved?
It will be on the ballot in Lowell this November. You'll be able to say which option you like best. Once that vote is taken, the City Council will decide which of the two options to adopt. So it's important for everyone to get out and vote.
So again, that video is available on the website, Your Lowell, Your Vote, if you want to watch it. It's also available in Spanish and Khmer, which are also linked on our website. Are there any other questions? If not, we'll adjourn. Thank you.
Great job. Yes.